Let's be honest, we spend most of our lives chasing more. More validation, more control, more certainty. We're told from day one that happiness is just over the next hill, right after the next promotion, or waiting for us with the next Amazon delivery. We build our entire identities on a foundation of external things. Our jobs, our relationships, our social status, our follower count. A French philosopher named Michel de Montaigne saw this centuries ago, writing that we are, in essence, always outside ourselves. We're so driven by fear, desire, and hope for the future that we get robbed of the here and now. Imagine living your life perpetually on tiptoe, craning your neck for a nod of approval. Think about that quiet hum of anxiety that underscores your days. The fear of judgment that shapes your choices. It's that deep-seated, unspoken belief that your worth is just a reflection you see in someone else's eyes. We've been taught that caring what others think is just good manners. But what if caring too much isn't a virtue, but a prison? What if the chains we feel aren't forged by the world, but by our own minds? And what if the secret to real freedom isn't found in getting more, but in letting almost everything go? This isn't a new problem. Nearly 500 years ago, a French nobleman retired from the chaos of public life to the solitude of his library and grappled with these exact questions. His name was Michel de Montaigne, and he believed we build our own prisons, brick by brick, by caring too much about things that just don't matter. As our people, as he put it, tied themselves in knots over petty concerns and grudges that drained life of its color. This is an exploration of his radical idea, that the art of living well is really the art of wise detachment. It is a journey into the mind of a man who found that when you stop caring about the trivial, everything essential finally falls into place. Before we get to Montaigne's solution, we have to diagnose the sickness he saw. So clearly a sickness that has only gotten worse in our modern world. We live in an age of insane connectivity, yet we often feel more isolated than ever. We have all the information in the world at our fingertips, but seem to possess less and less wisdom. We're surrounded by gadgets meant to save us time, yet we constantly feel like we're running out of it. Think about your own life. How often do you replay a conversation in your head, agonizing over what you should have said? How much of your mental real estate is spent crafting the perfect social media post, a highlight reel that looks nothing like the messy, beautiful reality of your actual life? How many times have you kept quiet in a meeting? Not because you had nothing to add, but because the fear of saying the wrong thing was just too much. This is the prison of the mind. Its walls are built from the fear of judgment. Its bars are forged from a need for approval. And the warden is our own ego, whispering that our worth depends entirely on the applause of others. We become actors on a stage, playing a role we think the audience wants, and we forget who we are when the curtain falls. The pressure is relentless. Our careers demand constant performance and a never-ending climb for the next promotion or salary bump that proves our value. The culture of ambition tells us that standing still is falling behind and contentment is just a fancy word for complacency. This creates a state of permanent unease, a feeling that we're never quite enough. It is, as Montaigne would have recognized, a kind of slavery nod to a keen, but to an abstract idea of success. Then there's the social arena, which has exploded from our neighborhood to a global network. Every post and every picture becomes a referendum on our lives. We filter out the blemishes and the sadness, and in return we scroll through the perfected lives of others. This creates an impossible standard and a nagging sense of inadequacy. We're comparing our behind-the-scenes footage to everyone else's highlight reel. And of course, we come up short. Even our own thoughts turn on us. We worry about a future that hasn't happened, playing out catastrophes in our heads. A mind anxious about the future, Montaigne noted, is a wretched thing. One of his most famous observations perfectly captures this modern ailment, with a well-known paraphrase of his words being, "My life has been full of terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened." We suffer in our imagination what we may never suffer in reality. A person who fears suffering is already suffering from their fear. We get chained to our own opinions, defending them with a fierceness that says more about our insecurity than our conviction. As one popular translation of Montaigne puts it, stubborn and ardent, clinging to one's opinion is the best proof of stupidity. We care so much about being right that we close the door on learning something new. We care so much about the past that we carry it like a corpse on our backs. We care so much about things' positions, status symbol sets. We become their servants. This is the prison, a state where our inner peace is held hostage by external events and other people. It's exhausting and unfulfilling. But what if there's another way? What if the key isn't a frantic search for a new key, but the realization that the door was never locked? This is where a 16th century philosopher becomes revolutionary. In 1571, at 38 years old, Michel de Montaigne did something wild. He was a successful statesman and courtier, but he just retired. He retreated to his family estate, to a tower library packed with over 1,000 books. He'd seen it all. This 16th century France was a mess of brutal religious wars, political backstabbing, and plagues. He had also known deep personal loss, especially the death of his best friend, Etienne de la Boétie, an event that colored his entire philosophy. It was in this tower that he started a new project. He began to write. He called his writings S's from the French verb for, to try or to attempt. A pretty humble title for a book that would change Western literature. But that was Montaigne for you. He wasn't trying to write some rigid philosophical system. His goal was far more personal. As he famously declared, "I am myself, the matter of my book." He was turning the microscope inward, examining his own thoughts, moods, flaws, and contradictions with a frankness that was simply unheard of. Through this deep self-study, Montaigne realized that our greatest battles are fought inside our own heads. He saw that the key to a peaceful, authentic life wasn't controlling the world, but mastering our relationship to it. This is the core of his philosophy of letting go. Now, this doesn't mean becoming apathetic or lazy. It's not an excuse to shirk your responsibilities. It's a form of wise detachment. It's about caring passionately about the things that actually matter, like friendship, learning, and living a good life while releasing your death grip on things that are either trivial or totally out of your control. It's freedom from the exhausting need for approval and the paralyzing fear of what others think. Montaigne's essays aren't a list of rules. They're an invitation to think. From his sprawling thoughts, we can pull out a few powerful principles for mastering the art of letting go. Principle 1, embrace your own imperfection. Our culture is obsessed with perfection. The perfect career, the perfect body, the perfect life. It's an impossible standard that sets us up for anxiety and self. Montaigne saw this as a kind of madness. He knew that to be human is to be flawed, inconsistent, and gloriously imperfect. He famously wrote that kings and philosophers shit, and so do ladies. This wasn't just him being crude. It was a profound statement of humility. His point was that no matter how high and mighty we seem, we're all just messy biological creatures. He followed it up with another gem, noting that even on the highest throne in the world, we're still sitting on our own butts. It's his way of stripping away the pretense we cling to. And he wasn't just talking about physical stuff. He was talking about our characters. He observed that we are walking cocktails of contradiction. A person who's brave on the battlefield might be terrified of public speaking. A generous person can have moments of petty selfishness. We aren't statues of virtue or vice. We're fluid and messy. Trying to force yourself into a neat little box is just doing violence to your own nature. Letting go, here, means letting go of the ideal of a perfect, unwavering self. It means accepting that you'll have weak moments, make mistakes, and sometimes contradict yourself. It's about replacing that harsh inner critic with gentle curiosity. Instead of beating yourself up over a flaw, you can look at it and ask, huh? Isn't that interesting? I wonder where that came from. Think of the pressure that lifts when you just give yourself permission to be human. The fear of failure shrinks, because failure is no longer a final verdict on your worth, but just a data point for learning. You can try new things and be vulnerable, because you're not terrified of sucking at them. Embracing imperfection is the first giant step toward letting go of the crushing weight of your own expectations. Principle 2. Suspend unnecessary judgment. Just as we judge ourselves, we're constantly judging others, and in turn, we live in fear of their judgment. Montaigne thought this whole economy of judgment was a massive roadblock to living freely. He argued that we have very little basis for truly judging another person. We only see what they do on the outside, with no access to the complex inner world that led to their actions. He suggests we shouldn't hold people to unrealistic standards, and that goes double for ourselves. The next time you find yourself forming a harsh judgment, just pause. Ask yourself, what do I really know about this person's life? What are they dealing with that I can't see? This isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about cultivating a default posture of empathy. More importantly, we have to apply this to ourselves. So much of our anxiety comes from an internal judge who is constantly finding us guilty of social slip-ups and personal failures. Montaigne's approach was to observe his own actions without instant condemnation. He treated himself like a fascinating subject of study, not a defendant on trial. When you stop judging yourself so harshly, the judgment of others starts to lose its power. Their opinions don't sting as much because you're no longer outsourcing your self-worth to two. You become, as Montaigne put it, an authority on yourself. And what's more liberating than that? Finding validation from within, instead of chasing it from a fickle outside world. Letting go of judgment means accepting the world and the people in it, including yourself as they are, not as you think they should be. It is a radical act of acceptance that allows you to move through life with more grace and less friction. Principle 3. Find freedom in solitude and self-reliance. Montaigne spent years in his tower, and his writing is a love letter to the power of being alone with your own thoughts. He believed true freedom was possessing your own soul. He wrote, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself." In our hypersocial world, that's a tough pill to swallow. We're often terrified of being alone. We fill every spare second with distractions, social media, podcasts, endless content streams. The silence of our own minds can feel deafening. For Montaigne, that fear was a sign that we've become strangers to ourselves. We've spent so much time performing for others that we don't know who we are when the audience is gone. Learning to be alone isn't about becoming a hermit. Montaigne was a social guy, a good friend, and a public servant. It is about developing an inner life so rich that your own company becomes a source of peace, not anxiety. It's about making sure your happiness doesn't depend on the constant presence of other people. He gave some practical advice here, suggesting we must have a back shop, a room behind the main store of our lives that is entirely our own, where we can retreat and just be. This is a mental and emotional space, free from outside demands. In this inner sanctuary, we can find a stable center that doesn't get tossed around by public opinion or social drama. When you know how to belong to yourself, you engage with the world from a position of strength, not neediness. Your relationships become healthier because you're not looking for someone else to complete you. You can enjoy social life, but you're not terrified by its absence. As he wrote, a wise person never loses anything if they have themselves. Letting go of the need for constant validation allows you to find the most reliable companion you will ever have. Yourself. We're journeying into the heart of Montaigne's philosophy, from embracing imperfection to finding freedom in solitude. If these ideas are clicking with you, and you're getting some value out of this, consider subscribing to the channel. We have a few more principles to uncover as we learn how to master this art of letting go. Principle 4. Question everything with humble skepticism. Montaigne's personal motto, which he reportedly had inscribed on his library ceiling, was a simple question. Q says G. What do I know? This wasn't a question of despair. It was a question of profound intellectual humility. It was the key to his skepticism. In an age of fierce certainty, religious and political, Montaigne championed the power of doubt. He saw how much suffering came from people being absolutely certain they were right. He recognized that human knowledge is limited and that our most cherished beliefs might just be cultural habits. As he rightly noted, how many things we once held as articles of faith we now see as fables. This skeptical attitude is a powerful tool for letting go. When you truly internalize, what do I know, you loosen the death grip on your own opinions. You become more open, more curious, and less combative. Arguments stop being battles for your ego and start being opportunities to see a different perspective. You don't need to win every debate because you're no longer convinced you have all the answers. This applies to your worries. When you're in an anxiety spiral, ask yourself, what do I really know here? You can separate the objective facts from the catastrophic stories you're telling yourself. You might realize your fear is based on a pile of assumptions, not concrete reality. Just questioning the certainty of your fear can be enough to break its spell. Embracing skepticism means letting go of the need for certainty. Life is ambiguous. Trying to find a solid answer for everything is a recipe for frustration. By embracing doubt, you become more flexible and at peace with the fundamental uncertainty of it all. You stop being a brittle branch that snaps in the wind and become a reed that bends without breaking. Principle 5. To learn to live, first, learn to die. This might sound dark, but for Montaigne, it was the ultimate key to freedom. As he argued in his essay that to philosophize is to learn to die. He who teaches us to die teaches us to live. He believed that the premeditation of death is the premeditation of liberty. He who has learned to die, he wrote, has unlearned to serve. So, what did he mean? In his time, just like ours, people did everything they could to avoid thinking about death. They saw it as the ultimate failure. Montaigne argued this is exactly what gives death its power. By refusing to look at it, we let the fear of it haunt every moment, which stops us from actually living. All our little fears of getting sick, of aging, of failure, really just echoes of our one great fear of non-existence. Montaigne's advice was radical. Think about death a lot. Not in a gloomy way, but in a calm, matter-of-fact way. Let us have nothing so much in mind as death, he advised. When a horse stumbles or a tile falls from a roof, we should quietly think, what if that was it? By making death a familiar thought, we rob it of its terror. When you regularly contemplate your own finite time, something miraculous happens. The trivial anxieties that eat up your day are revealed for what they are. Completely insignificant. That argument with a coworker, that social snub, that worry about being successful enough, all of it just shrivels in the face of your own mortality. As Montaigne wrote, to know how to die delivers us from all subjection and constraint. This practice forces you to ask the big question. Given that my time is limited, what truly matters? The answer is never more money or more likes. It's always about love, learning, contribution, and experiencing the beauty of the world. Letting go of the fear of death is the final act of surrender. And it isn't giving up on life, it's the exact opposite. It's the act that finally allows you to embrace life fully and without reservation. When you're no longer afraid to die, you're no longer afraid to live. You're free to be bold, to be authentic, and to savor every precious moment. You understand that the value of life isn't in its length, but in its use. Adopting these principles isn't a one-and-done fix. It's a lifelong practice. It's the slow, patient work of untangling the knots of fear in our own minds. The transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about finally becoming yourself. You were there all along, buried under layers of social conditioning and self-imposed rules. So how do we start? Let's distill Montaigne's wisdom into a practical toolkit. First, practice wise detachment. When you feel a surge of anger or anxiety, don't just react. Take a breath and observe the feeling like a curious scientist. Name it. This is anxiety. By observing it without identifying with it, you create a little space. In that space, you have a choice. This is stepping into that back shop of the mind Montaigne talked about. Second, conduct a triviality audit. At the end of each day, take 2 minutes and write down what you worried about. An awkward email? A comment someone made? Now, look at that list and ask, in the face of my own mortality, how much does this really matter? You'll find that 99% of your daily anxieties are about stuff with zero lasting significance. This trains your brain to tell the difference between real problems and self-created suffering. Third, practice intentional imperfection. Deliberately do something you're not good at, and do it without apologizing. Sing off key. Draw a terrible picture. Try a new sport and be clumsy. The goal is to divorce the act from the outcome and find joy in the process, not just in the perfection of the result. This actively rewires the part of your brain that equates worth with performance. Fourth, cultivate humble inquiry. In your next disagreement, make it your goal not to win, but to understand. Lead with questions. Try phrases like, help me understand your perspective, or that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. Adopt Montaigne's motto, What do I know? This dissolves the ego's need to be right and opens you up to real connection. The goal of all this isn't to become a cold, unfeeling robot. Montaigne's philosophy is deeply human. The goal is to feel more, but to feel more of what matters. By letting go of the constant hum of anxiety, you create the bandwidth to experience deeper joy, more profound connection, and a real sense of purpose. You become free, not free from responsibility, but free within it. You can chase your goals, but your self-worth is no longer tied to them. You can love deeply, but your happiness no longer depends on others. Life stops being a frantic performance and becomes a fascinating journey. You stop auditioning for a role you were never meant to play. You simply live. We started this journey in the prison of the modern mind, a cell built from the fear of judgment. We've walked through the 5 great lessons from a 16th century philosopher who found the key to freedom not in getting more, but in letting go. We learned to embrace our glorious imperfection. We learned to suspend our harsh judgments of ourselves and others. We discovered the freedom that comes from knowing how to belong to oneself. We adopted the liberating power of asking, what do I know? And finally, we confronted our fear of death and realized that in doing so, we are finally freed to live. Michel de Montaigne wasn't a guru selling a secret. He was an honest, curious human being who used his own life as a laboratory for living well. He left us his work, not as a set of rules, but as a conversation with a wise and compassionate friend. His message, echoing across 5 centuries, is simple. Your life is your own. The approval you need is your own. The peace you seek is not out there in the world, but in the quiet, spacious freedom of your own mind. Letting go is not giving up. It is coming home to yourself. It's the realization that the most beautiful lives aren't the most praised or perfect, but as Montaigne believed, those that conform to the common human pattern, with order, but without miracle and without eccentricity. It is the simple, radical art of being authentically, imperfectly, and freely human. What's one thing you're holding on to that no longer serves you? What's one trivial worry you can choose to let go of today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Eating them is honestly one of the best parts of making these videos. And if this exploration of Montaigne's wisdom resonated with you, be sure to check out our other video on the stoic art of emotional resilience. Thanks for watching.